Saying goodbye to a person with dementia is difficult, and we all move through the grieving process in very different ways. Verna Klimack is a funeral celebrant. She helps families plan meaningful memorials and celebrations, and today she's going to share with us some ideas about grief and the grieving process. Verna, what does a funeral celebrant do?
A funeral celebrant is someone who meets with the family, spends some time remembering their loved one, and then together with the family works in preparing a service that would truly honor their loved one's life.
In your experience, what sorts of things are families going through when a death occurs?
Oh, they are experiencing a variety of emotions.
Yeah.
One is the grief itself, which can be very intense. And what I have found is families, even though they've been anticipating the loss, when the time of death does occur, they're often surprised with the fresh wave of grief that comes over them.
Yeah.
But the other emotion that can equally surprise them is that sometimes they have feelings of relief.
Oh, sure, that's understandable.
And with that feeling of relief, there could be even feelings of guilt, like I shouldn't feel, some relief that their suffering is no more.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it marks a time, well, now I can get on with my life and start living again. And so when they start experiencing some of that, they go, well, I should be grieving. And yet there's room for both.
What other emotions have you seen families experience?
Sometimes there is anger, disappointment that, their loved one didn't live longer in some cases. It depends too on the type of death. Like with Alzheimer's, it can sometimes be very fast and progress quickly, and especially if the person is young, because they might feel that their loved one was cheated out of life and the life they were hoping to have with them. But I know in some cases when the diagnosis may have happened early, but the person lived so long with Alzheimer's that when the time of death comes, that's where the relief kind of kicks in.
Do you have any advice for people who are struggling to get through their own grief on how they can remember the good times and create a meaningful celebration?
Well, this is where a little bit of advanced planning comes in. And to spend some time when they're not focused on the caregiving aspect, but to spend time thinking about their loved one in earlier years. So you remember their essence, what they were like, their joys, their hobbies, family events. And often something that can help trigger the remembering is just taking a look at photos. And more families are now incorporating slideshows or audiovisual presentations as part of the service. And there they have pictures when their loved one was a small child and their growing up years, adult years, family years, and to the present time. And it's in the remembering, I find that it helps with the healing of our hearts as we live with the loss. But it's also in the remembering that we are able to keep that gift of love alive within our hearts. And sometimes we lose touch with that when our loved one doesn't even remember who we are.
Sure.
Doesn't identify family members, but yet we're still connected. That's an eternal kind of connection that can't be taken away. And with Alzheimer's too, the grieving also begins often with the very first diagnosis. So the journey is a long journey, and there have been many little losses along the way.
Those are some great ideas. Do you have any other ideas?
Their lives are multidimensional, so it's important to honor different aspects from all those dimensions in their lives. So if they love to dance, let's talk about it and play a dance tune. If, during the Second World War, there's a lot of big band music that was really popular, and you play that and they remember their loved one lighting up to that kind of music. Well, let's have that kind of music played at the service. And for me in the service, what I do is I make the connection. Why are we listening to this piece of music? And tie it into the significance that it had with their loved one.
Thank you so much.
Sure thing.